John Harris had never considered himself a hopeless romantic. In fact, he often joked with his friends that romance was more complicated than rocket science, and he had spent years working on rockets. A mid-level engineer at Orion Tech, he spent most of his days designing propulsion systems, calibrating Starship engines, and troubleshooting problems that nobody else could solve. Life was steady, predictable, and lonely. It wasn't that John lacked social skills. On the contrary, he could light up a room with his humor, charm a client with technical explanations, and even make alien dignitaries laugh at the oddest jokes. But dating? That was a whole different galaxy of stress, a place he had never dared to explore. His friends, however, were persistent. Every weekend, they would hound him about his love life. "John, you can calculate the trajectory of a spaceship to Alpha Centauri, but you can't land a date?" teased Malik, his coworker and closest friend. "Romance is unpredictable," John said one Friday evening as they sat in a crowded cantina on Earth's orbital station. "Engines fail. Ships crash. But dating? That's chaos multiplied by infinity." Malik laughed. "Maybe that's why you need a blind date. A structured approach to chaos." John shook his head. "I don't want to set up Malik. I don't know, someone who actually connects with me." But Malik had done his homework. He had found a service called Star Match. Unlike other dating apps that promise scientifically matched connections based on personality, values, and compatibility, and it claimed to guarantee life-changing results. "You'll never know unless you try," Malik insisted. "You're a human genius in a galaxy full of beings who barely understand their own gravity. Maybe it's time to calculate the trajectory of your own heart." Odd. He was exhausted after a long week of Starship simulations and engine recalibrations. The thought of being matched with someone guaranteed compatible sounded both absurd and strangely tempting. By Saturday evening, John found himself sitting in a small, softly lit restaurant in downtown New Chicago. He had followed the instructions carefully. No futuristic gadgets, no personal information beyond his name, and arrived precisely at the scheduled time across the city. In a distant star system light years away, Lyra adjusted her holographic schedule. She was a striking woman, with an elegance that seemed effortless, though every movement she made was calculated and precise. Her eyes held the kind of wisdom that only centuries of ruling 3 galaxies could give. She wasn't just rich, she was a leader, responsible for the governance of trillions of beings, planets, and star systems. But tonight, for the first time in decades, she wanted something different. She wanted to experience something ordinary. She wanted to meet a human. Despite her cosmic responsibilities, Lyra had done her part for the blind date. She had kept her profile simple, even misleading in some ways. She presented herself as a humble businesswoman from New Chicago. No mention of galaxies, starfleets, or interstellar governance. After all, she wanted someone who would appreciate her for herself, not her power. When John arrived, he immediately noticed her. Lyra sat at a corner table, sipping water and reading a small book that looked ancient compared to the digital screens he was used to. She looked ordinary at first glance, yet there was something in her posture, quiet confidence, that caught his attention. "John?" she asked, looking up with a soft smile. "Yes," he said, standing up nervously. "Hi, I'm John." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "Please, have a seat." The first few minutes were awkward. John was used to talking about engines, propulsion, and planetary colonies, not small talk. But Lyra had a way of asking questions that drew him out, making him feel heard. "So," she began, "what do you enjoy doing when you're not calculating trajectories for starships?" John chuckled. "Well, I like tinkering. Engines, gadgets, robots, things that move or fly. What about you?" Lyra tilted her head. "I read. I explore. I learn. I enjoy discovering things most people wouldn't even notice." The conversation flowed naturally. John was amazed at how easy it was to talk to her, and he found himself laughing at her subtle humor. He didn't suspect anything extraordinary about her. She seemed just like a remarkable, confident woman. Meanwhile, Lyra observed him carefully. His honesty, curiosity, and humility were rare traits. Most humans or beings from any species would either be intimidated by her reputation or fawn over her wealth. But John treated her like a person, not a ruler. That intrigued her more than any title or power could. As the evening progressed, they shared stories about childhoods, careers, and dreams. John spoke about his love for building starships, the thrill of solving impossible engineering problems, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a project succeed. Lyra spoke of her travels, the civilizations she had encountered, the wonders she had witnessed. John was captivated, though he didn't yet realize how extraordinary her life truly was. He assumed her travels were simply wealthy business trips or exotic vacations. He laughed when she described alien creatures that seemed like myths to him, believing they were simply eccentric stories at one point. Lyra asked, "If you could explore any world in the galaxy, where would you go?" John's eyes lit up. "Honestly, I've always wanted to visit the nebula belt in Orion Prime. The colors, the dust clouds, it's like stepping into a painting. But mostly, I want to see it with someone who shares the wonder." Lyra smiled softly. His words touched something inside her. Most beings she met were either afraid of her or obsessed with her position. But John's excitement was genuine. He was dreaming, imagining, and hoping. That was rare, even among the most enlightened civilizations. Their food arrived, simple and unpretentious. John had ordered a local pasta dish, and Lyra had chosen a small salad. They ate while continuing to talk, discovering surprising commonalities. They both appreciated simplicity, honesty, and curiosity. They both enjoyed problem-solving, not for recognition, but for the joy of understanding. After dessert, Lyra glanced at her communicator. A small alert blinked a message from her fleet. She smiled faintly and tucked it away. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, standing. John nodded, assuming it was a minor work issue. "No problem. Take your time." Lyra stepped into the quiet hallway and spoke briefly into her communicator. Her voice was calm, professional, and authoritative. In a matter of minutes, she resolved a situation involving a planetary trade dispute in one of her galaxies. It was over before most humans would even notice. When she returned, she smiled at John as if nothing had happened. "Sorry about that. Galactic emergencies?" she joked lightly. John laughed, thinking it was a clever metaphor. He had no idea she had literally handled a problem that could affect billions of lives. They walked out of the restaurant together. Outside, the city lights reflected off the metallic surfaces of nearby buildings, casting a soft glow. John felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. He hadn't expected to connect with someone so quickly, yet here he was, reluctant to say goodbye. "Would you like to meet again?" John asked, trying to sound casual. Lyra's smile widened. "I'd like that." As they parted ways, John couldn't shake a strange feeling like something monumental had just happened, though he didn't know what. He thought about her smile, her curiosity, and her kindness. He felt hope, excitement, and a bit of awe. Lyra, walking back to her private shuttle, reflected on him. For centuries, she had met beings who were clever, powerful, or beautiful. But how many had been genuine, humble, and curious? Very few. John's simple honesty and excitement for life made her realize that perhaps, at last, she had found someone capable of understanding her beyond her titles. That night, John lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about Lyra, about the laughter they had shared, about the ease of conversation he had never felt before. There was something magnetic about her, though he couldn't explain why. He drifted to sleep with a smile, unaware that he had just met a woman who controlled 3 galaxies, and that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. Across light years and star systems, Lyra gazed out of her observation deck at the glowing stars. She thought of John, of his curiosity, of his unassuming courage. She knew their paths had crossed for a reason, and though she could not yet see what the future held, a quiet excitement stirred within her, anticipation of something extraordinary, something that might just bridge the ordinary and the cosmic. And so, 2 lives, worlds apart in status and experience, had intersected in the most ordinary of ways, a blind date. But ordinary, as they were about to discover, was a thin veil over a universe of possibilities. The next morning, John woke with a strange sense of anticipation. It wasn't excitement over a new project or the satisfaction of solving a technical problem, it was something else. Something foreign to him. He thought about Lyra, her calm presence, the way she listened, and the laughter they had shared. For the first time in years, he felt a connection that seemed deeper than casual conversation. He tried to focus on work, but his mind wandered. Every adjustment to an engine simulation or every calculation on propulsion efficiency seemed dull compared to the memory of their dinner. His colleagues noticed his distracted demeanor. Malik nudged him during a team meeting. "You're glowing, man. Did something happen last night?" John shook his head, smiling sheepishly. "I met someone. A blind date." Malik's eyes lit up. "Finally. Tell me everything." John recounted the dinner, the way Lyra asked thoughtful questions, her gentle humor, and how easy it had been to talk to her. He laughed as he described her galactic emergencies joke. Malik listened intently, teasing him about falling for someone he barely knew, but John didn't care. Something about Lyra felt different. He couldn't explain it, but it was as if he had glimpsed something extraordinary hidden beneath ordinary appearances. Meanwhile, Lyra was preparing for her next meeting, but this time with John in mind. She had been cautious during their first encounter, testing his integrity without revealing her true identity. But she could not ignore the unusual feeling she had when he smiled, the way he treated her as a person, not a ruler. That was rare, almost unheard of in her circles. She had met geniuses, adventurers, and warriors. But few had the combination of humility, courage, and genuine curiosity that John possessed. Lyra's assistant reminded her of another urgent matter in one of her galaxies, a diplomatic disagreement that could escalate into interstellar conflict. But instead of letting it consume her day, she decided to take time for John, planning their second meeting. She wanted to see more of him, to understand if his character was consistent beyond a single evening. They agreed to meet at a small art exhibit in the heart of New Chicago. John arrived early, eager but nervous. He had researched the exhibit, hoping to impress her with knowledge of local art, yet he felt it didn't matter. He realized that whatever he said, Lyra would notice honesty more than flair. When Lyra arrived, she wore a simple yet elegant dress, her posture radiating confidence. John's breath caught slightly. She looked ordinary to the casual observer, but to him, her presence seemed almost magnetic. "Hi, John," she greeted, her voice soft but clear. "Hi, Lyra. You look amazing," he said, blushing slightly. She smiled, tilting her head. "Thank you. I'm glad you're here on time. I hate being late for anything." As they walked through the exhibit, they discussed each piece of art. John was fascinated by her perspective. She noticed details he would have overlooked, the subtle brushstrokes, the way light played across the canvas, and the emotions the artist intended to convey. John, in turn, shared his interpretations. "Sometimes clumsy, but always sincere. You have a unique way of seeing things," Lyra commented. "Most people only glance at the surface, but you notice layers." John laughed. "I guess that's what engineers do. We try to understand how things work underneath the surface." Lyra's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Perhaps that's why I enjoy your company. You're not afraid to ask questions, even if they seem simple." After the exhibit, they walked along the city's river promenade. The lights of New Chicago reflected on the water, casting a warm glow. John felt comfortable as if he had known her for years. "I still can't believe we met like this," he said. "A blind date, of all things." Lyra laughed softly. "Life has a strange way of arranging events. Sometimes the simplest moments lead to the most extraordinary outcomes." They sat on a bench, watching the city lights twinkle. Lyra's communicator beeped softly. She glanced at it, but instead of answering, she tucked it away. "I'm trying something different tonight," she said. "I want to be present fully here." John smiled. "I appreciate that. It makes me feel valued." As they talked, Lyra decided to test him further, not with questions of intelligence or humor, but with moral judgment. She spoke of a fictional scenario involving two distant planets, one struggling with famine and the other hoarding resources. She asked how he would handle the situation. John paused, considering. I'd find a way to share resources, even if it meant personal risk. People's lives are more important than politics or wealth. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. His answer was honest and compassionate. Most beings in her position might speak in theoretical solutions, but he was straightforward and empathetic. The evening passed quickly. They ended up at a quiet cafe, sharing desserts and laughing at their mutual awkwardness with ordering. John realized that Lyra had a warmth he hadn't expected, a kindness that went beyond her intelligence or beauty. Suddenly, as they left the cafe, Lyra's communicator beeped insistently. This time, the message was urgent. A fleet on one of her outer planets had detected a potential threat. It's an unknown anomaly in space that could destabilize nearby systems. She glanced at John, hesitated, and then spoke. I need to leave for a while, she said gently. Something urgent has come up. John nodded, masking his curiosity. Is it work? She smiled faintly. You could say that. Galactic emergencies. John laughed, thinking it was another joke. He didn't suspect that she had just averted a crisis affecting millions of lives. Lyra left, promising to meet him again soon. John watched her go, feeling a mix of admiration and curiosity. There was something extraordinary about her. Even if he didn't yet understand how extraordinary, over the next week, they continued their meetings. They explored local parks, attended small concerts, and shared meals at quiet restaurants. John felt like he was living in a dream. He had never imagined someone so intelligent, so kind, so genuinely interested in him could exist. Lyra, on the other hand, was studying him carefully. She observed his integrity, his humility, and his courage. He wasn't just honest. He was consistent. He treated her with respect, but he never fawned over her. He asked questions, expressed curiosity, and shared his thoughts openly. In a universe where she was often surrounded by flattery and fear, John was refreshingly genuine. One evening, they attended a small local lecture on planetary ecosystems. John was fascinated by the discussion, and Lyra was impressed by his insightful questions. She realized that his curiosity wasn't limited to engineering, it extended to understanding the world, people, and life itself. After the lecture, they walked through the quiet streets of New Chicago. The night sky was clear, stars twinkling faintly above the city lights. John stopped and looked at her. Lyra. I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you longer than just a few days. Lyra smiled softly. Sometimes connections are not measured in time, but in understanding. John nodded, feeling a warmth he had never experienced. He had no idea that the woman in front of him held the power to shape galaxies, that she commanded fleets, ruled civilizations, and carried the weight of countless lives. To him, she was simply Lyra, the woman who laughed at his jokes, listened to his thoughts, and seemed to understand him. Then came the day that would change everything. Lyra invited John to what she described as a special event, a private gala to celebrate cultural achievements in New Chicago. She told him it was a simple gathering, but she neglected to mention that it was also the center of intergalactic diplomacy. John arrived, expecting a small hall filled with artists, scholars, and local dignitaries. Instead, he was greeted by a breathtaking scene. Enormous transparent walls revealed the stars outside. Ships of various designs docked in orbit, and holographic displays showed planetary systems. Fleets and alien delegates. He froze, unable to process the magnitude of what he was seeing. This is incredible, he whispered. Lyra appeared beside him, smiling. Welcome to the heart of my work, she said softly. I should have warned you, but I wanted you to see things as they are. John turned to her, eyes wide. Wait, are you saying you're in charge of all this? Lyra nodded gently. I oversee 3 galaxies, but that's not why I wanted you here. I wanted you to see something beyond ordinary life, to understand part of my world. John struggled to comprehend. He had faced challenges in engineering, in space exploration simulations, and even in emergency situations on stations. But nothing had prepared him for this. The scope, the responsibility, the sheer scale of her life. Yet, even in the midst of awe and confusion, John noticed something important. Lyra didn't wield her power to intimidate or impress. She treated every delegate, every alien with respect and fairness. Her authority was calm, measured, and compassionate. She wasn't a ruler who demanded fear or obedience. She was a leader who inspired trust, John realized. In that moment, that what mattered most wasn't the galaxies, the fleets, or the power it was her character. And her character, he saw clearly, was extraordinary. As they walked through the gala, John and Lyra talked quietly. He asked questions, not about politics or military strategy, but about her values, her experiences, and her hopes. Lyra answered honestly, without embellishment or pretense. John listened, fascinated, and for the first time, he felt truly connected to someone on a cosmic level. By the end of the evening, John understood two things. First, that Lyra's Lee. John stood beside Lyra as the gala continued around them. Leaders of distant species held soft conversations. Delegates discussed trade routes, peace agreements, and cultural exchanges. To everyone else, it was a gathering of great importance. But to John, only one thing mattered: the woman standing next to him. His world had been turned upside down. He now understood that Lyra was not just a rich businesswoman. She was a ruler, not of one world, not of one star system, but of 3 entire galaxies. She had the responsibility of trillions of lives. She carried decisions larger than he could ever imagine. Yet when she looked at him, she did not look like a ruler. She looked simply like Lyra, calm, gentle. Hopeful John took a deep breath. "I won't pretend that I understand everything about your life," he said quietly. "But I know one thing. You've always treated me like an equal. You never made me feel small. So I won't treat you differently now." Lyra turned to look at him. Her expression softened. In all her years of leadership, she had never seen such steady courage in someone so ordinary. "John," she replied, "my life is not easy. It is full of pressure, danger, and decisions that affect countless beings. I wanted to show you this because I do not want lies or shadows between us." He smiled faintly. "Thank you for trusting me." She hesitated, then asked, "Are you afraid of me now?" John thought for a moment before answering. "Not afraid, just amazed." A quiet laugh escaped her. "Amazed is acceptable." They stepped away from the main hall and walked through a quieter corridor lined with glass walls, revealing the vast spread of stars outside. Ships of different shapes and sizes drifted past, long golden vessels, circular glowing discs, and sleek silver arrows. Each one represented a different civilization under her protection. John stopped and stared, stunned. He whispered, "I never knew the universe was this beautiful." Lyra watched his awe with silent joy. She had seen such sights thousands of times, yet seeing it through his fresh eyes made everything feel new again. She led him to a balcony overlooking space. No barrier separated them, only a transparent energy field keeping the air contained. John reached out instinctively, placing his hand against it. Beyond that field lay endless space, quiet and infinite. "It's peaceful," he said. Lyra nodded. "Peace is not the natural state of the universe. It must be protected." John turned to her. "Do you ever get tired?" She nodded slowly. "Every day. Leadership is not about power. It is about responsibility. I cannot make mistakes. Every decision I take changes lives." He fell silent. He had faced high-pressure situations before: engine failures, emergency repairs, risky experiments. But nothing compared to what she carried daily. After a long moment, John spoke softly. "You don't have to carry all of it alone." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "John, you cannot imagine the weight of what I carry." "I don't have to understand all of it," he replied. I just know that you deserve someone who supports you. Even if he cannot solve all your problems." Lyra's expression changed. She stared at him with new warmth. It was not admiration. It was gratitude. "John Harris," she said quietly, "you are more courageous than you know." He laughed slightly. "I was shaking inside when you said I oversee 3 galaxies." Lyra smiled. "You handled it well." Before they could speak further, a soft alarm echoed through the balcony. Lyra raised her wrist. A holographic message appeared. "Distress signal, Galaxy Sector. 12 pirate raid in progress." Her calm demeanor shifted instantly. She was no longer just Lyra. She was Supreme Regent Lyra of the Trigalactic Council. Her voice became firm. "Prepare my flagship," she commanded. "Activate defense fleet. Coordinate evacuation for civilians." Her assistant responded immediately through the communicator. "Yes, Regent. Estimated launch in 5 minutes." John watched her in awe. She transformed from gentlewoman to commanding leader without hesitation. He realized then how powerful she truly was. Lyra turned to him. "I must leave." John nodded. He knew she had no choice. But before she could go, he spoke firmly. "Wait," she paused. "I want to come with you." Lyra stared at him. "John, this is not safe. There may be combat. There may be danger." "I know," he said. "But I don't want to watch from far away while you face everything alone." "It!" She hesitated. "You are not a soldier." "I'm an engineer," John replied. "Even in a crisis, machines break. Systems fail. You might need someone who can fix things when no one else can." Lyra looked at him carefully. He was serious. She could see no fear in his eyes, only determination. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. You may join me. But you must follow every instruction I give." He smiled. "Yes, Regent." She gave him a small, amused glance. "Call me Lyra." They hurried to the docking bay. Rows of soldiers and pilots stood ready. Some were human. Others were alien beings with scales, glowing eyes, or metallic limbs. But all of them snapped to attention when Lyra entered. John watched as every soldier bowed their head in respect. Lyra acknowledged them with a nod. Then she stepped aboard her flagship, a colossal silver vessel with wings that stretched like a great bird across space. John followed. Heart pounding. Inside, the ship felt like a moving city. Engineers ran diagnostics. Pilots adjusted controls. Officers studied holographic maps of the target sector. Lyra stood at the central command platform. "Set course for Sector 12, she ordered. "Course set," replied the pilot as the ship launched. John felt a deep vibration under his feet. He looked out through a transparent screen as stars blurred past. They entered lightspeed. Lyra turned to him. "You still wish to be here?" "Yes," he said simply. She studied him for a long moment, then smiled softly. "When this is over," she said, "there is something I wish to ask you." "What is it?" "You will know." Minutes later, they exited lightspeed near a large planet under attack. Pirate ships swarmed around it like insects. Civilian transports tried to escape, but some were captured by tractor beams. The bridge filled with tension. Lyra raised her hand. "Activate defense drones. Disable pirate weapons. Protect all transports." Her fleet moved with perfect coordination. Silver drones flew from the flagship, firing precise beams that disarmed pirate ships without destroying them. John was amazed there was no unnecessary destruction. Lyra fought with control and mercy. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ship. "Shield Section 4 damaged," shouted an officer. "I can fix that." John yelled. Lyra looked at him. He was already moving toward the engineering panel. She gave permission with a nod. "Grant him access." John reached the panel, fingers flying across the controls. The shield generator had overloaded. If it failed completely, the ship would be vulnerable. He rerouted power, balanced energy flow, and rebooted the stabilizer. "Shield restored," announced the officer. Lyra looked at him with admiration. Minutes later, The pirate ships began retreating. They had lost their advantage. "Pursue only to secure prisoners," Lyra ordered. "No unnecessary harm." The fleet complied. Soon, the battle was over. Civilians were safe. The threat was neutralized. John stood beside Lyra as the bridge relaxed. He felt exhausted but fulfilled. Lyra turned to him. "You were brave," she said softly. "You did not freeze. You acted." John smiled. "I just did what I know best." Lyra nodded. Then she took a step closer. "John Harris," she said quietly, "I have met countless beings in my life. Warriors, leaders, scholars, and explorers. But none have shown me what you have. And what is that?" He asked. "That strength is not measured only by power," she said. "Sometimes it is measured by kindness, by loyalty, by the courage to stand with someone even when you are afraid." John swallowed, unsure what to say. Lyra took a deep breath. "I do not know what the future holds. I cannot promise peace forever. My life will always be filled with responsibilities. But if you will walk beside me, I believe I can bear it more easily." John's heart raced. "Are you asking what I think you are?" Lyra smiled gently. "Yes. John Harris. Will you stay with me? Not as a servant, not as a follower, but as my equal, as my partner." John felt warmth spread through him. He did not think of her title. He did not think of the weight of galaxies. He simply saw her, the woman who laughed at his jokes, who admired his honesty, who trusted him in danger. He stepped closer. "Yes, Lyra, I will stay. Not because you rule galaxies, but because you rule my heart." She let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, almost a sigh of relief. Then in front of the entire bridge, she reached out and took his hand. No one questioned it. Soldiers and officers smiled silently. They had seen leaders command armies, but now they witnessed something greater, a leader choosing love. The flagship turned toward home, and so, a human engineer and a ruler of galaxies began their journey not as strangers from different worlds, but as partners, not bound by duty, but bound by choice.